Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is the postgame pod following the destruction and demolishment of the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. OU wins 66-17. Some of us were at the game, some of us were watching from afar, but we're all here together right now. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Jay.
And Connor.
All right. Well, first off, let's thank our post-game sponsor, Tobacco Exchange. As you know, 3 great locations, Oklahoma City, Edmond, and more. They've got great selection. They've got expert recommendations. We are big fans. We are big customers. And tell us what we're smoking tonight, Lucas.
Tonight we're having a Punch Golden Era, and it is very light and airy. It's on the mild side, but it's a perfect late-night smoke when you're not wanting to get anything too heavy.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a nice wind down here after the semi-long drive back from Tulsa. Well, let's talk about the game and get into it. I think there's going to be some positives and some negatives. Not necessarily the negatives that you would expect to see in a ball game. You win by 49 points when you're only supposed to win by 25, or 28. But still, a game with some ups and downs that were kind of interesting. I think it'll be something that is a little bit divisive in a lot of ways. So. Getting into that, before we get into that, I want to mention something and a callback, if you'll remember, to what was almost a hot take, but I don't think it was a hot take. At the start of the season, preseason, at the on-site pod at Tobacco Exchange, Connor said something about what the defense would be able to do in the non-conference schedule, and he said he was hoping that we could limit the opponents each to 28 points, and I said, I think we'll limit all of them to 28 points, and indeed they only scored a combined 28 points against us, which we looked it up. The last time that happened was 2009 when OU lost to BYU 13-14, beat Idaho State 64-0, and beat Tulsa 45-0. The last time that we were undefeated and held our opponents to 28 or less was in 2007, beating North Texas 79-10, Miami 51-13, and Utah State 54-3. It just speaks to how good the defense is playing right now. Obviously, these are very different teams, different eras, so we can't get too much into that. But it is nice to see our defense holding opponents to really low-scoring margins, and the scores that we're taking on. Really, this week, these scores were not really threatening. Only at one point in the game was it where Tulsa could have done something to make it a ball game, and they didn't. Obviously, last week SMU had a chance and made it a ball game for a while, scoring just 11 points. But I'm pretty impressed by that. Another accolade, we'll get into defense in a bit, but 5 interceptions, most since 2003 versus Texas Tech. And technically we had 6, that one was called back on a penalty. That definitely an interception. The play fully played out. We would have had, in fact, it probably would have been a pick 6.
Yep.
Definitely got the interception clean. So 5 true by-the-book interceptions, very impressive of the defense. But let's start with offense and talk about some things. I'll say one last thing and then throw it over to you guys. I thought one of the things that I said was what to watch for was offensive production and efficiency. I thought we saw production for sure. Efficiency was hit and miss. So what are you guys' thoughts overall on the offense today?
No, I completely agree, and I think what I said during the game, I still believe around. It feels like what we did today against Tulsa is what we should have been doing to some extent last week. Saw some stuff opened up. It's almost like the staff listened to our podcast.
I'm sure they do.
Right from the get-go, seeing balls thrown over the top.
Anthony.
Anthony, again, has really just put his foot down and is that over-the-top threat that I think we were all hoping to see. Farouk, another good day. I think from an effectiveness standpoint, it was hit and miss. I think that Gabriel had moments where it was like, this is what we've been wanting to see and we've seen glimpses of in the past, but even today, it was just glimpses of that effectiveness. There were still times where I go back to the play where there's a deep ball that we're throwing to the left sideline, and instead of just putting the ball where his receiver can go make a play on it, he launches it. It is almost like a pop fly in baseball. It was just completely uncompetitive, not a lot there. And there was just another few instances. I think the biggest part of my disappointment from an offensive side, outside of how impressive it was the 2-minute drill that we ran going into halftime. Trying some cutesy stuff inside the 30-yard line that I don't think you really need to do. Bringing Jackson Arnold in and putting him in at wideout. It's making teams look at things and maybe prepare for different things. But if you're going to do some of that, I want the end of the drive to end in 7 points.
Well, and you had two things there that really frustrated me. One was a poorly executed pass by him, which does give teams a chance to look at that and have to prepare for it. I err on the side of make them prepare for it. It was poorly executed. But in all that, what frustrated me was you're running them up the middle when clock is now not on your side and you're trying to score. And before all of that, or at the very start of it, you are down there at the 2-yard line with 46 seconds left and you don't call timeout.
Yep.
Kevin Wilson ends up calling timeout for Tulsa with 33 seconds where we're ready to snap the ball. But the point is you let a lot of valuable time go away. You could have used that time. We end up by penalty getting a 1st and goal at the 2-yard line or at the 4-yard line, and the ball moved around a lot with those different successive penalties. And the point is we didn't have time we needed to run an additional play. And especially if you can just throw the ball into the end zone, you stop the clock if it's an incompletion. So that was a little frustrating. All sins get forgiven by a touchdown, and they did not get the touchdown.
Yeah.
So that was really frustrating.
And Arnold was squared up with a defender on that play, and he took a pretty good shot.
Mm-hmm.
He ducked his head and ducked his shoulder, and they rammed right into each other. Now, he seems to be okay, but again, I don't think that's what you ultimately are supposed to be doing with your future quarterback.
And again, from a productivity, we had 587 yards today. So, and that's with a.
Was it?
I think it was. I think somewhere around there, pushing
A
600
bunch.
yards with a pick six, with almost another pick six, with scoring it from 3 yards out. So very productive day across the board offensively. I think there were some things that looked a lot better. One thing I am worried about, and Jay and Lucas, I know you guys will probably touch on this too, is I am concerned about the run game at this point. Like,
It's trash.
our longest run today, 17 yards. It does not look like our offensive line is getting any sort of push up front to be able to open up holes for our running backs. So,
Well, in our pregame, I mentioned things to look for. I wanted to see a more passing game because Washington had torched them for like 535 yards or something. And we did. We got 476 passing yards through essentially 3 quarters, maybe a couple minutes past that. Otherwise, we could have easily, we could have thrown for 600 yards today if we'd have wanted to. But yeah, the rushing isn't there. Barnes today, and we were three of us were there. Jay was not. He had more pressing things, which is totally understandable. And we were in the end zone in Tulsa. Now, it wasn't the best end zone seat because we were kind of on the side of the end zone. It wasn't as great as my.
So they get better than that because that was awful.
They get way better if you're dead on and down the straight.
You can see what's
straight down the
happening.
end zone. You can see everything
Okay,
better.
take your word for that.
But we got to see Barnes not have much vision today, and we
looks
were
like
really
he's wearing
hoping
the wrong cleats too.
he kept running in the back of his line when there would be a hole that you would expect him to hit. And over
weird
and over,
cutbacks, too.
Yeah, it was a really weird game for him.
Yeah, it's right here in my notes. Barnes' vision sucks. He
And,
runs right
and
into the back
even
of our offensive
even
line.
the one where he scored on the touchdown, he ran into a lineman and then scored it off to the left, as opposed to hitting a hole.
And it was a huge gap.
Or just going straight
Huge
to.
He
gap.
just
Straight
put his head
to the-
down and
yeah.
ran straight into our guy, and it was like, oh.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then
yeah.
we-
There's 3 feet over here to the left that I
Yeah.
could just walk in the end zone with, and that was kind of perplexing because
Uh-huh.
I don't remember seeing that when he played in the what bowl game was
In
in
Champs,
the Alamo Bowl.
Camping Bowl.
No, what was it?
yeah.
Bowl
The
game?
last bowl game.
Cheese It Bowl.
Cheez It Bowl.
Oh, yeah, jeez.
So him and Sawchuk looked incredible that game against Florida State, and I thought he had good vision then, and it was off today in that aspect. And then another thing I said that we need to look for was the OU crowd attendance, and I think I said 20,000 to 10,000 or maybe 23,000 OU fans, and I was kind of scoffed at, and then it turned out to be the case today. There was the student section, and then there were the season ticket holders between, the 30s. And other than that, it was all OU fans. So great job showing out. It never really got really loud when we were on defense, but it was louder than anything Tulsa put forth whatsoever for the entire game.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the important points you're bringing up about running back. So it seems like we are in a Barnes-Sawchuk world all of a sudden. They were the dominant running backs in terms of number of carries today, which is what we have been calling for and what we really have foreseen to a degree, although we weren't extremely satisfied. One of my things to watch for was, are we going to get to see a lot of running back play? And I thought late in the game, I thought we would be running away with this. My predicted score was 59 points, and I was closest for what it's worth. But the point is, not that I was close, but that I thought we were going to do well. I didn't think it was going to look like it did. I thought we were going to be in a position where we're running the ball and we're getting some late touchdowns by just stuffing it down their throat.
Yeah, Walker didn't get a touch today.
And we weren't. Walker didn't get a touch.
Caleb Hicks stayed home.
Kind of strange. Caleb Hicks
it might just
stayed
be
home.
like a traveling situation where you only have so many kids.
You can take less players.
I was
Yeah.
surprised,
So
though.
I
I was surprised to see Smothers before we saw. I know Barnes got in the game late in that last drive in the second quarter. I didn't see him after that. Walker.
Yeah,
He got in late.
Major didn't seem like he was
I
out
don't
there.
think he had a carry. Did either one of those have a carry?
Major had one or two.
Yeah, Major had at least one. That
He was
one that
in
got
early,
called back.
yeah.
That was a really good run.
Yeah, that was definitely a holding. They got that one correct.
Yeah. So I had my concerns. I said O-line not consistent in run blocking. It seems like it's a certain weakness. If you've got poor, and I don't know where it lies, if it's in both probably, bad vision by your running backs in conjunction with O-line that's not opening up the right gaps and not being in the right positions. We definitely had some missed blocks today that were pretty telling and obvious. Stogner had a missed block or two that were really significant. So I'm concerned about that. We're going to have to get much more effective in the run game to be able to be a team that can win games, to put teams away, etc. Everything you need to do, it really is predicated on effectively running the ball. So that's a concern. Passing game, though. So I wrote down notes about the deep ball, and I kept switching the note as I went through the game. Started out with deep ball was on and doing well. And then all of a sudden, Gabriel was throwing behind receivers, too low, throwing slow. They're having to stop their route and catch it. Other times, just throwing really poorly. Then they'll come back and throw pretty good. We saw one that was a really good touchdown, and then he has this interception that is just ridiculous. It was an absolutely horrifically thrown ball.
He got hit a little bit on the play.
He got hit, but he threw the ball way too late and way too high. He should have been throwing that ball way earlier. And so then, and this can be the transition to talk about this, Jackson Arnold comes in, and I'm hoping for and got my wish that he throws a deep ball, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And one thing that I'll say, or two things that I'll say about it. One, he rolls out, he's going to take a hit, and he takes a huge hit as he releases the ball. And the receiver, Anderson, is just magnificent, and you see him, he's running right at us where we are, and he just starts hauling. And
he's not even looking for the ball.
He's not even looking for the ball, and the ball is in the air, and it is just like he knows.
It
he
gets
knows,
about
this is
it
my
gets
quarterback,
about 5 feet
and
away,
this is
and
what
he
he
looks
does.
up.
He looks up, and
it
it
drops
is
in his
in the
hands.
breadbasket, as good as we've ever seen.
Yep.
And it just pure, absolute. And I'll say the other thing I want to say about it is that was the most excited point I was at the entire part of the game.
Oh, absolutely.
That brought in excitement to me that was reminiscent of what we'd see in years past, and it just tells you that's what we've been missing, that's what we've been lacking. And no disrespect to Dylan Gabriel. I really like the kid. I really like him as a quarterback. I think that he is very good. I think he is a very above average, but I think he's got a ceiling that we're seeing, and he's got limitations that we're seeing. And I will say I'm getting really close to calling for Jackson Arnold, that I want to see him just handed the ball.
Not yelling it forward on the field necessarily.
No.
But just hoping we see
I think
it.
it's ready.
Yeah.
I think it's ready. I think it's ready.
I think I saw he has an 82.5% completion percentage.
Dylan Gabriel.
Yes, and we're wanting to get rid of the guy, but it's crazy.
It's crazy, but
I had a problem with
So good.
going back to when you were talking about the play right before halftime, and they're running Jackson Arnold up the gut, and then we run out of time and have to take a field goal. I don't feel like we exploited the tall receivers, especially in that situation. They had I think it was Jaden Gibson was out there, and he had at least 6 or 7 inches of height on Tulsa's, I think it was number 5. When they stood next to each other, it looked like the Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram meme. It was ridiculous. There is no way that you can't just throw the ball up to him, and he's not going to come down with it. The defender was kept with the inside leverage, so they could have easily thrown a fade route, and unless he drops the ball, but he's proven that he hasn't really done that this year.
No, he had
Yeah,
a
you
great
showed
catch
good
today.
hands.
But just give him a
He's-
shot.
Yeah, but
him a
especially
shot.
You gotta shoot.
instead of running and you're having to burn timeouts, when we had the 33 seconds like you're talking about, they could have run that play at least once, if not twice, if it didn't work the first time, and we come away with 7 there instead of 3.
If we catch the ball. And
Yeah,
I will say, and I know we're biased, but every time OU is on defense in that situation, we know, I don't care who the opponent is, we know what they're going to do. They're
Yeah.
going to throw and pick on that short versus tall receiver, and it works every time.
yeah, and it didn't-
Unstoppable.
I mean, and Nick Anderson's a really tall kid too, and he proved he had 3 catches for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now they weren't just throw up because he's tall plays, but
No.
but you had a point where you could have put Anderson on one side and Gibson on the other, and then whoever you wanted to in the slot didn't matter, and or even Stogner, and you would have had a definitive size advantage out there. Other than the number 1 for Tulsa, the safety, I don't know his name.
Yeah.
That dude would look like a monster. He wasn't as fast because he was so big, but it was weird. They had him covering Drake Stoops, and they had these little tiny corners covering
I bet it was speed.
the bigger receivers.
Speed and talent, and
He
beggars
didn't.
can't be choosers.
He might be speed, but he didn't have the hips to be hanging with any jukey motion.
Well,
think
they
he was
probably
a-
don't have a
which is
player
weird
who
why they
can.
had him
I
covering
think he was the
Stoops.
Oklahoma State transfer, that guy.
Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, so I didn't understand. I mean, obviously we're being very picky. We scored 66 points. We had defensive touchdown. The very first play of the game, kickoff, Farouk goes back to the 35 and fumbles. Would have had an amazing field position.
Longest play of the
But
game.
it was just obviously nitpicky, but I don't understand in that situation. You've run the Jackson Arnold Belldozer package, which worked against Arkansas State. It hasn't worked since.
No,
and he's
fact,
a throwing quarterback.
I have a spin on what I've heard from some friends and I've said it over time. I love the concept of do it until they can stop it. And we seem to be doing the opposite, which is we're going to do it until it works. And by God, with stubbornness, we're going to do it until it works. And that bugs me. That concerns me. And you know, picky or not picky, there's a realism aspect to this podcast, and that's what you got to be. And,
Yeah.
the realism is it's not perfect.
Do the same play with the receivers spread out wide, and you have less people in the box, and you give him a better lane to pick. If you're just going to run the
Yeah,
quarterback,
if you're running a
Why are you bunching-
semi-jumbo,
why are you bunching it all?
They
Yeah.
did run it wide on those plays that we're talking about that I'm saying should have been jump balls.
no, I'm saying, but if you're going to run the quarterback
Inside the
draw,
3 or whatever.
right? Spread out the defense.
yeah,
give
they were
him a lane to
spread
find.
out on one of
They,
those.
they
That's
were
what he's
they
used
were
to in
spread
high
out on
school.
that right before halftime at least.
Well, it's tough when you're on the 2-yard line because they can't be that spread out because there's no one deep. So I'm just saying I'm agreeing with you. Like if you want to run that and be effective with it, do it when you're on the 15-yard line, and it's 3rd and 2. When you're on the 2-yard line, it's pretty tough to be effective with that because the entire defense is sitting there within 5 yards of the ball. So it's just not going to work.
So I want to preface some of my comments about the game. We've had different listeners comment on YouTube and personally through text and whatnot, but about some of our negativity for the team. They overperformed in this game than I thought we would, but I try to look at each game in terms of us being a national title contender. So I'm not just happy with the victory today. I try and dig deeper in my thought process and evaluate different parts of our team as if I want us to be at a certain level, not just happy about winning a game. So I just wanted to throw that out there for my comments for the rest of the pod, just in general.
I think that's a good point, and that's what we're really going for. And we're trying to be critical and be good analysts. We're not just sitting here going to laud, hey, yay, points. We won by a lot. We covered the spread. There's more to it than that. And you got to dig into the nuances to understand the true nature of your team so that you're not surprised when you get down the road and things aren't working. In fact, I'll say personally, I've been mistaken in years past by thinking and really glossing over some weaknesses that we obviously had on defense and then in some other key areas. And then we get into a game that we lost down the road or early in the season to a Kansas State or something, or we get into the playoffs and we just get manhandled. And it's like, well, you should have seen this come into it, that you've got these weaknesses, so I'm trying to be better at all of them.
I think we really have leveled that out as well. Like, since that first season when we're talking through Tulane and stuff and rationalizing why we are an elite team through every nail-biting victory that we
start off
come out
9-0 and we really should have been probably 6-3.
Yeah. And I do think if last year was not a sobering experience, then nothing else will be. And Jay, to your point, I completely agree. And I think that's why I've been hypercritical of Dylan Gabriel. Is because I look at quarterbacks, my example today that I was talking with Steve about.
Yeah, he cannot win us a national championship.
Exactly. And you think about those big plays that win you games like you need to win in the Cotton Bowl or a big road game, a Big 12 championship, a college football playoff game. I don't see Dylan Gabriel being consistent enough to trust him to make those plays.
Especially in a pressure situation.
Yeah, in fact, I see him contracting into himself in those situations.
I being very conservative, looking to the flats, looking to the safe routes. When you look at things like Kyler Murray throwing that, what ends up being a one-handed catch in the Big 12 championship, which was the go-ahead touchdown,
extending lead.
I think it was like a
extended
yeah.
2 possessions.
Yeah, 2 possessions, which really put the game away.
Right.
For all intent and purposes. Can he make that throw in that situation? And that was, I can't remember. Was that a third down? That's a real critical down in that point.
I believe it was.
You're going to settle for a field goal if you don't get it, and that's not the extension you want. Can Dylan Gabriel make that throw? Can he be the guy you trust there? I don't think he can.
Like, one example for me that I wrote down while watching was, it was like a shallow post to Anthony, and Anthony had to go to the ground and catch it.
Yep.
You've got to throw that up so he can catch it and run.
Me and Steve looked at each other and we said, if he hits that, if he just throws that anywhere near his belly, it's a touchdown.
Yeah, you have to
Put him
make
in stride
that
and make
and
him
he
make
wasn't
that
rushed.
No.
He had time to throw it. It just was off.
It was still a completion. He still gained 25 yards on it or whatever,
it's
but
the difference.
It's a 55-yard touchdown if he catches it.
And it's the difference between what we've seen with truly phenomenal elite quarterback play in the past 7-8 years, and going back farther, Bradford, White, etc., and other quarterbacks that were very effective but could not get the job done in the critical situations. And that's the difference in everything you've got. I mean, you look at what he's accomplishing in terms of completion percentage. That's probably skewed by how many safe routes he throws. But look at yardage, look at touchdown passes, look at production. If you say, what if he were better the way we think a quarterback in our position should be better, you definitely have a Heisman candidate. You definitely have someone who is an elite quarterback who can lead you down the road. Because these things are turning into touchdowns, because you're not in third down situations you don't want to be. And it's going to open up the run game in amazing ways.
That's what's been very surprising to me. I'm assuming for some reason the teams have decided they're not going to let us just run the football, and we're going to let Gabriel and the receivers just torch us. It's the only thing I can come up with. Because when you're throwing, the ball downfield today, in like with Arkansas State, the run game should just be opened up from that.
But they never do react,
and it's not. And so they're just letting us keep doing it, which is strange. So I'm trying not to harp on the run game too much, because they're just letting us pass.
Could this be it though? Could they be letting us do it because they recognize our weakness?
I think so. I think they're going to assume he's going to mess up, or he's
Not
going to
gonna make the
short
right
it, or he's
throw.
going to make the best
And what
throw.
would you do if you're a defensive coordinator? Say, I'm going to make him beat me with his arm. I'm going to try to do everything I can, but I've got to put especially when I'm overmatched, I've got to put my resources into stopping the run, and maybe take my chances on what. And it's hit and miss. Sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it's not.
The
very
whole
good.
run game is very perplexing. It's disturbing because we're about to play teams, even if they are underperforming this year, across the board they're going to have better athletes and better players, and we have to be able to run it better than what we're running.
Yep.
It's very poor. To
Well-
think of what we've done to these three teams, how many points we scored and stuff is great, but you should be running the ball for 7 yards a carry against these teams.
Well, going into the Tulsa game, we were a little disappointed in the running game against SMU, but then when I was looking at Tulsa stats, they only gave up like 109 yards rushing to Washington, 102 to Arkansas Pine Bluff. So they're selling out on the run. I still thought if we were able to get Barnes and Sawchuk in there, that those guys, I thought the vision was there for Barnes. Obviously today I didn't think so, but I thought the vision would be there that if they had a little bit of hole, they would get it. And I think we end up rushing for 119, which I just think Tulsa's selling out on the run. So I don't know 100%. I still don't know for sure if our running game is that bad or if it's just that's what teams are trying to do to us.
Yeah, it remains to be seen, but I do think that we see shortcomings in many respects that are just pretty obvious.
Yeah.
We should have more production. We should have more success. We should have a bigger threat there.
Because our pass blocking looks pretty good, right?
Our pass blocking is very
looks
good.
really good.
So,
yeah,
I mean-
our run blocking is poor. It really is poor.
And it would be poor if you've got a stacked box where people are not letting you run or putting the odds in their favor, and two, if you've got running backs that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, hitting the holes they're supposed to hit with the speed that they're supposed to hit it. And not to continue to circle back to him, but you have to also think about, is it the quarterback? Is the quarterback making the wrong decision? Is he making the wrong idea of zone reads? Is he not effectively executing everything that needs to happen in the little stuff that that throws off the timing of the entire play? Definitely a concern. So we have our concerns on offense. Otherwise, we have our excitements. I'm going to go on the record as saying I am pretty much I'm ready for Jackson Arnold to be the quarterback. And I know that's easy to sit on my couch here having a cigar on a Saturday night and say...
Not chips and not Bud Light.
No, not chips and Bud Light to that guy on YouTube. But it definitely is something that I think we need to give some pretty strong consideration to, because he is the future of this program. And I do think you don't miss that much in the next few weeks up until Texas in terms of making that transition. But where he puts you is on a high new plateau and a greater ceiling, so that you can win a Big 12 title, so that you can get into the college football playoff and be competitive.
Yeah, I think the floor is the same if you put in Arnold.
I do too.
All the freshman mistakes he would make, some of his limitations on the playbook.
We call Gabriel's
Everything.
mistakes freshman mistakes.
It's true.
If you were a freshman.
But the ceiling is, exponentially higher.
Yeah, I think at this point with Gabriel, I think he just is what he is.
Yep.
I don't think there's, and again, maybe that's obvious.
It
Because
could be
we're-
enough. It
Yeah,
could be
I mean,
enough. I don't
maybe
know.
it's enough,
Defense
but-
could be.
I don't think we're going to see a point in time where he's consistently throwing the ball where he needs to throw it on these routes to put it in front of his receivers. I don't think there's going to be a point in time where his deep ball, more times than not, is either underthrown or 50 feet too high in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he is what he is now. And
Yeah.
I will go on record as well with Steve. I think now is the time to make the move. I think if we want to think in the mindset that we're all saying we're thinking of in terms of going to that next level and competing for championships, that needs to be Jackson Arnold, who is the captain of that ship.
Well, I like all those points. I'll say one other thing that came to mind. When Jackson Arnold was in there on another completion, he steps around a defender like the guy isn't even there. the grace and poise that I always go back to guys like Baker, who just and Caleb Williams, who just it's like those defenders are not grown men coming after you, and he just sidesteps it and executes the pass with precision as well as a lot of authority. And it's something I don't see out of Gabriel. The other thing I want to talk about that occurs to me is, why isn't Gabriel running the ball more? We thought at this point he would be running the ball more. We're not seeing him run the ball at all. Is that him not keeping the ball on his own read properly? Is that him not audibling into the right play call because he just doesn't see it? Because based on history, Lebby likes to have his quarterback run. There's no, we don't know what's in the mind of Lebby, but there's no reasonable explanation for why you wouldn't run Gabriel based on what you've seen with the backup in Jackson Arnold. It's not that tender of a situation. Why is he not running the ball more and using that as a threat to open things up? I think that's a pretty big mystery that we need to, it'd be nice to know the answer to, but it's one more thing where I just lean towards we're not getting a lot of anything additional out of Gabriel versus what we'd have if we just put Arnold in. Well, let's talk about defense. Again, like we said at the top, 5 interceptions, very impressive. Probably 2, maybe 3 drives that we'd have our pretty strong criticism over. The game was all but decided when those drives happened, and they were against the backup quarterback, who we certainly didn't prepare for, who was stylistically very different than their starting quarterback. And we did seem to make adjustments after the first drive of the second half to really shut that down. We were subbing in a lot of personnel, so I'm willing to give the defense a pass on some of that. Definitely saw some weaknesses, but overall very impressed by the defense. Continue to be impressed by the defense. What are you guys' thoughts?
Jay, how'd it look on TV?
We looked fast. We did. We looked like we got maybe even more pressure than we have been getting the previous 2 weeks. Still not a lot of stuff that got home, but definitely enough pressure to rattle and affect their routes and affect their timing, which obviously leads to things like 5 interceptions. Our zone coverage is still
A work in progress.
still very much a work in progress. When we drop that many guys into coverage, there should not be people that open. But we did, as Steve alluded to, we were rotating in a lot of people today. So a lot of kids got time, and you're going to have that as an issue that comes up in general. I'll have to go back and rewatch the game just to double check what I was wanting to say. So maybe I'll save it for Wednesday.
Throw it out.
No, I think we're getting close to kind of hammering down starting defensive line, because there are players that are consistently making plays and that seem to get more pressure. And as we get deeper into the season, into conference play, it's good to have our depth, but you're also going to have your guys, right? And so I think we're close to getting that.
We only gave up 75 yards rushing today.
Yeah, rush defense is great.
They've proven the last 3 games that the rush defense can really stifle teams, and they have to start throwing the intermediate passing, because that's what seems to be open, where maybe the linebacker bites a little bit and the safety hasn't come up and they're doing the in-between routes. We haven't gotten beat over the top really at all, so that's great to see. And then
Everything seems to be in front of those safeties currently.
they average 1.6 yards a carry. 75 yards on 46 rushing. We'll take that all day, every day.
Yeah.
They were 8 of 9 on third down. We did get back a little bit of the stuff that we are used to seeing with 3rd and 12, and they get 15 or 16 yards. There was a couple of those. I don't feel like we had a bunch of penalties on defense at all. What do we have for the game on penalties? 7 for 65.
So I think it was very effective. We had a few breakdowns in pass defense, but really we're missing Justin Harrington today and
McCullough.
And
Gentry Williams looked phenomenal.
Gentry Williams looked very good in front of his hometown.
Banged up on a play or two. But man, that guy knows how to tackle correctly.
does.
Now,
It's
we
so
had a guy,
good
yeah.
to see a
Oh.
corner that knows how to tackle correctly and not just dive in there with their shoulder or even, try to throw a hip in there. He actually wraps up and takes people down, and that's great to see again.
So we had one guy that was getting lost a couple times in coverage, and I think they were picking on that. It helped me with that. Who was that?
Reggie Pearson.
Reggie Pearson, yeah. And so that's a little bit of a concern. But
Vickers is a true freshman.
Vickers
he got
was
beat
thrown
on
out
on a
there
player
into some
too.
toughs. And
There was a play that Vickers got beat on, quote unquote, but he was having to cover two guys. The quarterback rolled out, and
Oh,
the
the flat.
running back came
Yeah.
out on like a wheel route type thing, and then the receiver went towards the end zone, and Vickers was like, "Well, there's two guys out here."
I chose the wrong one.
Yeah, he come up to cover the wheel route because nobody else was there, and they threw it over the top on him. Maybe he thought he had safety help, or maybe
linebacker was supposed to come
linebacker was supposed to come cover the wheel route and just didn't make it over. So there's nothing he could do on that play. It was either going to be a touchdown or they was going to throw in front of him on like the 15-yard line, and he has to make an open field tackle.
So just a few nitpicky things there, but otherwise a lot of really solid play, a lot of speed, a lot of gang tackling, everybody rushing to the ball, great pressure on the quarterback. Really, as the game wore on, which is what you want to see, that D-line was getting more and more effective, especially in the run game. I was a little surprised by a couple things that Kevin Wilson did. It seemed like the game, so we're up, is it 35 to 14?
35 to 7 at one point.
And 35 to 14, and they are down there deep in our end zone, or pressing to get into the end zone, and they elect to kick the field goal.
It was that first drive of
First
the second
drive
half.
of the second half, and that was just really perplexing to me, because if you're going to have a chance to win this game, you got to get a touchdown there, and the math seems to be go for it and try to get the ball back. So that was interesting.
They knew they weren't winning that game.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
probably
so.
not,
They
but I
couldn't
mean,
stop the
even
offense.
if at that point,
then what are you doing?
what
Why are you doing anything?
You're
Why
putting
not-
you're putting your field goal kicker in there to kick an extra point, essentially.
I want to give
Yeah.
a shout out also to the hands of the defenders.
Oh man,
How many
active
seasons?
hands. Yes.
How many seasons have we seen dropped interceptions?
Even Key Lawrence.
wide open
Yes.
stuff. I mean, guys jumping up and it hit them right in the hands and not coming down. I
Yep.
mean, we're talking.
The Stutzman's was a
We're talking
one-handed
5 years at a time.
tap back
We've
to
seen
himself.
that over and over. And
Yeah.
today you had Trace Ford with an interception. PJ had an interception that was called back on a penalty. You had Stutzman catching that and running the end zone. I mean, it was just all the
Kendall
guys.
Dolby's interception.
All the guys that are
was
supposed to
it-
catch the ball
yeah, one-handed,
it.
wasn't it?
caught it, and that
Bowen,
was great.
except
to
for
see.
Bowen, which is, he had his hands on two of them. And he might have the best hands in the secondary.
Yeah.
He just hasn't come
Well,
down
and I was
with
about
it yet.
to say we had a season or two with Grinch where were we pushing to get 5 interceptions the entire season?
Or something like
correct.
Truly, I truly think that's an actual stat.
One of
So,
the ones Bowen didn't get was the
He just jumped way too early.
he's instead of taking another step forward and kind of getting in front of a receiver coming across, he jumped up and the receiver just kind of slid in front of him and went up for it. But I'll take what we saw today any day of the
Oh,
week.
absolutely.
Having him actually catch those balls.
Yeah.
And to the how you alluded to the defense playing better, the defensive line for the run game. I think what they're doing much better this year is they're not losing contain. You know, they're keeping their gaps right. The ends aren't over pursuing up the field, which leaves big gaps between your tackles.
I
And
saw that happen one time today with Downs. Downs got a little bit too far upfield on that edge, and luckily for us, though, I mean, in those situations, that quarterback for Tulsa, when I thought he should take off and run, he was staying back there and trying to pass the ball.
Yeah.
So, for a guy that looks like he should be able to run, he didn't do that a lot.
Well, there was
And we
one
exploited
with that D line. I can't remember who it was. See, maybe you guys do. Late in the game, he breaks free and he's running to the quarterback and he finishes the play out.
That was PJ
That was PJ
with a 9-yard sack.
and that was such a beautiful thing because, like
Textbook.
you're saying, not just textbook, but like you're saying, in contrast to prior years. In prior years, he olays the guy and he continues to run.
He did get a little bit of Olay going on in the third quarter. I feel like he was kind of working his way around and dodging some stuff. But that specific play was phenomenal.
Very strong. He was on an island. It was just him.
Yeah.
There was nobody else to help him.
Well, at first, it didn't look like he even believed that he was sitting there in front of the quarterback and like stuttered for a sec and then just said,
well, you wonder if
finishing
he's
the
thinking,
play.
I got
Just
through so
bulldogged him.
easily. Is this a screenplay?
Right. Like,
And
am
so
I
then he was like,
missing
nope,
something?
I know what
Yeah.
to do here.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's gonna be a difference maker. I'm excited.
Yeah, he
I'm
is.
really
Absolutely will.
excited about really excited about him.
Yeah, very much so.
Defensively, it was, I mean, just like we said, outside of those few drives, great to see all the players that are in there. Great to see the rotations that we had. We had a couple guys in there late in the game that weren't even on the depth chart. So, anyways, I think between keeping people healthy, whether it be McCullough and hopefully Harrington's not as bad as what everyone is speculating in the local media market, but overall, pretty outstanding performance.
Yeah, I what else but accolades? I mean, what did Brent say? He said
Said a laundry list of
A
things.
laundry list
A laundry
of
list of
things.
things that he wants to fix on
Yeah.
defense or clean up on defense.
yeah. So I love hearing that, and I love seeing that.
Special teams today, we had the big Farouk opening kickoff.
Yeah.
And apparently
you
we are
hate that he fumbles
specialists
it.
in coffin corner kickoffs.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
wow, it's a night, man.
It's the
I
same
don't know.
corner every time, and we always feel like it's a little too close to that pylon.
Yeah.
We don't want to give them the ball on the 35.
Man.
At some point, it's going to get too close against a team like Texas, and they're going to get the ball on the 35, and we're going to be.
Is it not a shorter distance to kick it straight
It is.
down the middle
I'm pretty good at geometry.
of the end
It
zone
is.
than it is to kick it from
It
the
is.
middle to the far left?
It is. Now maybe what he's thinking is, if I can make the sideline my friend and an extra defender,
Yeah.
but you're already kicking it to the end zone. It's if you're kicking it there and it's hitting 3-4 yards into the end zone, doing the math, if you were to kick it down the middle, you'll be at the back of the end
Right.
zone. So just go to the back of the end zone. Unless, and I'm not a kicking expert, I don't know. Maybe you don't know you can do that every time.
Yeah.
But he does it every time.
Maybe in
So,
practice it's like 7 out of 10.
I don't know.
It hits the base of the goalpost or something, let's say. But the other 3, it's only 3 yards deep. And if they brought that out, they could go either way, and you're setting your scheme up to just go left now. Instead
Yeah,
of,
if you do short it,
Yeah.
If they catch it at the goal line right down the middle,
Right.
there's a much greater chance of
Yeah.
return.
And he was shorter deeper in the game after he had had multiple kickoffs. I don't know. And maybe they're thinking, well, when you're in the Texas game, you're a little tight and that type of a game, so that you're not going to kick it out of the back of the end zone with as much ease. I don't know, and we want to work on this, but it does scare me that you're really flirting with a really bad, not disaster, but really bad way to start a drive defensively if you give them the ball on the 35-yard line.
I like seeing them put an extra blocker back by Freeman on the punts.
Uh-huh.
You're still that leaves you with one guy on each gunner, but having the guy 10 yards in front of Freeman kind of gives him the
That's
freedom.
the old-fashioned way. That's the way they always used to
It
do
kind
it.
of gives him the freedom of when he's going to catch the ball. If he knows what that guy in front of him is doing, it gives him an extra level of being able to
absolutely.
get the first 5 yards before he has to start making moves.
Yep.
And he's proven that he can
make moves,
take it
and
to the
he's got
house when he
wheels.
needs to. Yeah. And then kicking wise, I was encouraged to see when we had the penalty on the extra point, we just still booted it right down the gut. That was nice to see.
Yeah, that was really nice to see.
9 for 9 on extra points.
Looking
1
into
for 1
little
on field
things
goal.
and reading off of them, that gave me some extra confidence in Schmidt in that situation with absolutely no doubt about it. He nailed that one like you want to see him nail it. Another thing about the kickoffs, to go back to that real quick, if you're concerned about the situation, then why don't you practice and learn how to kick it on a really deep onside and make them field the ball that way versus try to use the sideline? Because if you err on the side of a kick that's a deep one and it ends up being short, it's got to be really short to give them the ball at the 35-yard line, and that up man is going to fair catch it.
Yep.
If you kick it to the sideline and you're off, in an easy way to be off, you're giving them the ball automatically at the 35-yard line. It seems like a bad risk return from my perspective, but I don't know. So do we have any listener questions? Anybody got something?
Yeah, I got one from our longtime listener, Matt. He wants to get our take on percent chances that Jackson Arnold is the starting quarterback at the end of the season, or by the end of the season.
Well, let me set a ground rule on this. I love that question. Thank you, Matt. And we can do one of two ways. We can do it both ways if we want. Let's look at it without the idea of a Dylan Gabriel injury. So there's some percentage
Correct. I
chance
think
that
that was-
there's an injury. He's assuming no injury.
right.
Like a true takeover of the
A true
position.
takeover of
Correct.
the position. Who wants to go first on that
I'll
one?
go first.
Go.
It's 10%. I think no matter how good we think Jackson Arnold is and that he is ready, especially after seeing that throw to Nick Anderson on the sideline, that's the best throw we've seen, in a while.
2 years.
Even when Caleb was throwing the bombs.
No, Caleb never threw the
Well,
ball
that's
for
what I'm
us
saying.
like that. Yep.
When Caleb was throwing the bombs against Texas and Mims' 50-50 ball and all that stuff,
He was more like Gabriel.
he
stuff.
really didn't have that drop it in the breadbasket that Arnold threw on that pass. It was
so good.
elite, is what it was.
It was very elite.
And there's a reason he won the Gatorade National Player of the Year. He won the Elite 11. He's the real deal. So I'm ready. I want to see him play more quarterback at this school, but I think it's just a seniority factor for the coaches, and I don't think they have, like I said, Gabriel's completing 82% of his passes. His touchdown interception ratio is 11-1. The one he threw today wasn't good, but he got hit on it. He still puts too much air underneath the ball on the long balls, and he could lead his receivers a little bit better, but the guy is very good. He's not elite. And I think that for experience factor, they're happier with very good than the possibility of elite, even though we all think wins and losses, the floor is the same with either one, but there's a higher ceiling with Jackson Arnold. I think we go probably 9-3 still. I'm still not 100% sold on everything. I'm worried about the rushing game. And that's with Dylan Gabriel. I think if you put Arnold in there, you're probably closer to 11-1 and maybe 10-2.
Wait a second.
But I don't think the coaches see it that way.
Oh, I like that. Before we go, I want to get everyone's take on this, but I want to double click, as the kids say, on that a little bit. So you're saying that 10% chance that he gets it, so we're 9-3. Would you up your percentage if I told you he's getting the start against Cincinnati?
Yes.
Or would you up your record if I told you he was getting the start
I would say
against
we're probably
Cincinnati?
10-2 if Jackson Arnold is a starter from here on out.
Okay.
And I think we're probably 9-3.
Okay.
But there's also a chance that it's the same record either way. But there's a better chance of being 13-0 or 12-0
Yep.
regular season with Jackson Arnold
Yep.
than there is with Gabriel.
Agreed.
And I don't think the worst case scenario would be worse than 9-3 with either one.
Agreed. What do you guys think about the percentage chance Jackson Arnold wins the job?
Yeah, I'll give a convoluted comment and kind of hedge my bets. I guess my initial percentage is probably pretty low, along with Lucas. I'll say 15% as well, or a little bit higher than him. And my reasoning is sort of the same. I just don't think the coaches will do it or want to do it. My only caveat to that is you give us a loss, especially a non-Texas loss, and I think my percentage goes through the roof, honestly, because you just can't afford, if we lose to a Kansas or somebody else.
What if it's a shootout?
Non-Texas.
What if it's 45-42?
I guess
it's
okay,
all situational.
A loss where you can see it's Gabriel's limitations are keeping us from getting to a certain point, then the coaches have a real problem on their hand. And I think there would be a very good chance that he would finish out the season that way with Jackson Arnold coming in. Without any losses, I think as a coach you just can't do that. I mean, if Gabriel's not losing games, you can't bench that quarterback. You just can't.
You can't?
No, you can't.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
You sure we didn't do that a couple of seasons ago?
Yeah. We didn't.
We did with Spencer. We hadn't
Yeah.
lost a game.
We were losing a game.
We were going to
We
lose
were
the
going to lose that
It was
game.
in the middle of a game when we
Yeah,
were
we
losing
were
that he wasn't
losing
doing
that
anything.
We were mainly losing that game because
Yes.
our defense was so bad. It was 28-7 after 10 minutes or
there was
whatever
a
it
lack
was.
of production on offense though as well.
Yeah, but
Clearly.
we hadn't lost the game at that
Clearly.
point.
I guess
we
my
did
point is,
do it.
if we're 7-0, 8-0, 9-0, something like that, you get past Texas, you get past some of these other teams, even if Gabriel's not looking elite,
Yeah, I
You
think you're
cannot
right.
bench
I think
him.
we were losing that game, and that's as good as the loss had happened. And I would and did at the time commend Riley for making that change when he made it. I think it was and as if we have lost this game, we might as well put in Caleb. And we put
well, yeah,
in
that's
Caleb
what
for
he was
one-
in a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Because if you put in
Exactly.
Caleb in that situation and you don't make a comeback and you don't win the game, oh well, you can go right back to
Yep.
putting Spencer back in.
So I want to comment on that in mind. So remind me if I don't to come back to that. But Connor, what's your number?
I holistically agree with both of them, and I'm actually more geared towards Lucas's number of 10%. That's what I was going to say initially as well, for basically all the same reasons. I don't think that our coaches, like I said on the way back from the game, there's no way after seeing Jackson Arnold throw that ball that he is not absolutely lighting it up at practice. Like I can't even imagine what the guy looks like at practice. I'm sure unless it's one of those, I don't know.
We're talking about practice.
I imagine he like, and I think that's what's more frustrating is if like I said, we haven't seen a throw like that in a long time, and Gabriel has never given us any sort of semblance of a throw like that. So when we talk about competitiveness and we talk about a true competition at each position, the coaches aren't doing that at quarterback. I think the coaches are set in their ways. I think they're giving Dylan Gabriel this thank you, farewell tour of his season that he's going to get. And
I hope not.
Until
I'll
their
comment
butts
on
on the
that.
line.
And again, yeah.
Well, they
until-
better not. They shouldn't coach like that. That's ridiculous if they're coaching like that. You coach to win games and put yourself in the
I
best
completely
position to
agree,
win.
but I don't think we are playing the best. I don't think we're playing the best quarterback right now. Unless, I mean, and again, I know that there is some sort of veteran, intangible thing that goes into playing that position at this level. But from, Steve, exactly what you said earlier, from the poise that he shows, from the moxie that he carries himself with, I don't have any doubt in my mind that he could step in there from the first snap until the last snap and be competitive and lead us to that 11-1, 12-0 regular season that we're talking about. So, but I think we are going to sit back on the seniority until, like Jay said, if there's a loss and there's an obvious lack of production, Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables are going to try to save themselves before they save Dylan Gabriel.
Well, I think those are great observations, great answers to the question. We've got the realist take, and really the Homer agrees at 10%. I'm going to say it's 100% now. I'm going to say that I think you're right, except I've got a little bit of hope, a little bit of Homerism that, and I'll try to rationalize why it might be a higher number. And I'm going to double it. I'm going to say 20% chance that he wins the job. So my reasoning is going to be he is throwing the ball really well in games. In fact, and we have to assume it's the same in practice. In fact, I would bet he's throwing the ball exceptionally well in practice, because have we seen him throw a bad ball in a game yet? And I know he hasn't had nearly as many throws and opportunities or in the situations Gabriel has, but he has not thrown anything close to a bad ball.
Today was
yet.
his first incompletion.
And he's had multiple attempts, and he's had multiple downs. I think he's doing everything they ask of him. We know that Lebby loves him. We know that Lebby really wants him. I do think that there is a conservativeness, which would be my explanation for why we're seeing things that we're seeing and why we would continue to see Gabriel. There's a natural conservativeness. I don't think it's we're going to give the guy, like he earned it or something, the chance to finish the season until something bad happens. But I do think they think conservatively, well, he hasn't lost it for us yet, so we're going to stick with him. I do think that with a loss, you get a clear conscience of nothing matters except get yourself on the right footing for the future.
Yeah.
It's a blank slate, and at that point, I would, with Jay, completely throw my percentage up. In fact, I'll start to be pretty critical if we lose a game and it's clear that our offense has not progressed, and we're still seeing what we're seeing, and offense is a big thing we're pointing at for a weakness, we need to make a change. So I'll say it's 20%. I think that's a meaningful difference from what you've said so far, guys, although I'm not saying you're wrong. I fear you might be exactly right. But I do think that it'd be a little different if this was a guy, even like Caleb, who came to the program. This is a guy they've recruited. They know this is their future. They know this is what they want. I imagine that Gabriel was always the serviceable quarterback that Levy wanted. He was not the elite quarterback that he desired. Jackson Arnold is the elite quarterback he desires. So there's a part in him that wants Jackson Arnold under center from here on out. So I think for all of those reasons, it's a little bit higher chances. And maybe, interestingly, even though I'm giving the higher chance to or a higher expected win-loss record than you, Lucas, you'd have to consider, with your thinking we're going to potentially lose 3 games, you've got to have a pretty good shot, or have to think there's a pretty good shot that Jackson Arnold gets in that situation, which may counter a little bit of your 10%.
I mean, I'm just solely based on offense, though.
On offense,
I think we can still have good offensive games and have a letdown in defense at some point. Like I said, the 11-to-1 interception ratio is fantastic. I mean, if we have 2 more games of that, you can do the math on it yourself. But
it's real good.
Yeah, it's real good. So if we go into Texas,
That'd be 22-2.
Well, that's not necessarily, because 2 more games, because we played 3.
Oh, 2 more games, right.
So going into Texas is what I was. If we go into Texas and he's 18-2 touchdown interception, we should have confidence that he's gonna look good. And with the way Bama played today, the Texas win is a little sullied because
Crap, the way Texas played today.
yeah, the way Texas played today against Wyoming, with that game at, what was it, 10-10
in the fourth
quarter. They had a couple late touchdowns to kind of finish it out, but all the raving Texas got this week after going to Bama, and it's still a very great win. To go into a team that's in the top 5 in the country and win the way they did by 10 points
But top 5 is
really good. But the way Bama struggled today, it's one of those.
They're not top 5.
Is Texas really back, or is Bama down? And it's probably more so that Bama was down than Texas is back, when we really thought it might be more that Texas was better than they are, than Bama was worse than they are. That, I mean, that gives you a little bit more hope if we play the next 2 games well and we take care of business, score points, keep the other team from scoring a bunch of points, and go into the Texas game on a roll. That my idea will be that we stand a better chance of beating Texas.
Do you think
than I currently did?
I think that's a good point. Do you think there's a chance we get into one of 2 situations? One, we start working Jackson Arnold into plays and the lineup more and more, such that it becomes our strategy and we have a dual quarterback situation? And another theory or concern, do we get into a quarterback controversy because of how successful they are? That we're in a position where we're maybe 9-0 and we've got 2 quarterbacks that look great and we know which one is the future, and everyone's saying, but can you possibly not play Gabriel, who's winning you these games, but get Jackson Arnold look so good?
It's the scenario I said last week. It's Chris Leak and Tim Tebow, and that proved effective. They won a national championship that way. And then
so you're predicting an OU national championship.
And then Chris Leak graduated, and Tim Tebow took over. I don't see a reason not to do that if we know that Arnold can throw the ball well. He's not a running quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and Tebow didn't throw the ball great, but he did a good job of both. And so if we use Arnold in both situations,
Yes.
Yeah.
as a complement to what Gabriel maybe doesn't do as well with the deep balls and just maybe the hard sideline out routes, because he has a better arm, then maybe what they've done the first couple games just continues to work.
Well, and you added a complete other dimension to your playbook.
Yeah.
Where
And the defense having to spend the time preparing for
say,
both quarterbacks.
Gabriel, we're still going to give you all these plays, but Jackson, while we're going to run you in this short yardage situation, I'm not going to be afraid to call something down the field for you.
Absolutely.
And let you go be successful or try to have success in those situations.
I think they would, but unlike the Chris Leak Tebow situation, I don't think anyone would look at it and say Tebow is clearly the future and has a higher ceiling than Chris Leak. Whereas I think we can look at it and clearly say that today. So if we continue to have the success, if we continue to have basically what is very effective, we're winning, it's at an above average level, but it's not elite, quarterback offense with Gabriel, and then Arnold comes in and it's always elite. It's always just magnificent. We're going to be in a tough situation.
It's real
but it also services another point of you're not redshirting Arnold anyway, and him getting more field time in that scenario of coming in every fourth series, let's say, gives him game experience. So he's seeing more of the field than a normal true freshman quarterback at an elite university would ever get.
Right.
Because that guy isn't going to start because he's so young.
Yeah.
And you've got a guy that's, even though he has another year left, we all know this is his last year in Gabriel.
Yeah.
And so you're doing two things. You're winning this way, but you're also getting him the experience that he's going to need going into the SEC next year.
Yeah.
Which honestly, we haven't really touched on this, but the fact that he does have another year and he knows he's not the quarterback next year proves he's seen it too. And the players know it, the coaches know it, and Dylan Gabriel knows it.
Right.
I'm not beating out this kid next year anyways.
Right.
This is not going to happen.
I'm moving on because I
Now,
have to.
I'm sure there's plenty that Arnold has to learn.
Well,
I'm sure
yeah.
there could be games where he just had a horrible game for us
Yep.
and lost us a game that Gabriel wouldn't have lost us.
Could be.
But
And I was thinking about that too. This is something that maybe Levy, among others, would laugh at my position on and say, listen, kid, you just don't understand. I'm older than him. You don't understand the fact that he doesn't know our offense the way he needs to know our offense.
Right.
And it may be starting back at game one with him if he were to take the helm as the starting quarterback. And so we can't do that because it would limit us in certain ways. I would push back and say, yeah, but if he can be this effective and this much of a threat and elite at so many things he can do, obviously, it makes up for the fact that you don't get your entire playbook, which we're still waiting to see your entire
I was going to say, I'll push back on the Jeff Levy playbook installation because I don't think there's that much there.
I wonder, too.
think Jackson Arnold can learn the 20 plays that we run because other offenses that we've seen here, the Kevin Wilsons, the Lincoln Rileys, the Mark Manginos, the Leach, those guys had 80 plays that they would use during a season, and we're seeing 20 or 30.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's that hard for Arnold to figure out, especially when, I don't know how they do it when they're in high school. I would think the day that they sign, they send them PDF files of every place in it, like the whole entire playbook.
I bet not.
Once they've signed.
I bet not.
You don't think they do that?
I don't think they share
You wait
that.
till they show up on campus and.
I don't know. Well, something
I
in
think
between.
once they sign their official thing,
Yeah,
I bet they do.
think so too.
I bet they don't release their playbook like that. I bet they're too. I mean, I don't know how they are.
They send him an iPad or something, and he goes over the place.
I think that's what they do.
I guess maybe. I don't know.
I mean,
I
maybe
can't
they're
imagine
maybe they're
they
printing them
disclose
out
that
and taking them
much.
to Kinko's with spiral binders and all that
Regardless,
stuff. But
no. I'm saying I don't think they disclose their
you don't
the
think
keys to the kingdom that way.
you don't think after that kid's signed and he's ready. Well, Jackson got here in January, so maybe that's a different story.
I don't know.
think
I
it's
don't know
too-
how
I don't
it
think
works.
they have enough control to release it like that. Like,
Yeah.
if Jackson's still at home, I think this is very.
I mean, he can be sitting in his
Situational.
room looking
It's
at playbooks.
speculative.
Yeah, but what
learning
if what if
stuff.
his buddy who's going to Texas happens to be
yeah,
over
but they
there?
sign in December.
Yeah.
It's not about him signing. It's a security risk of
Actually having the playbook.
he would
out
have
there.
the play. Yeah, the playbook would
I
be
don't
out
think-
there, and
I
someone
don't
else
think
could
so.
attain it, or he could
They just watch
have a
film.
reason to give it up. I don't. maybe not. I
And
don't
what they're
know.
doing is not that secretive anyway.
Yeah.
That's
I-
something we should ask Casey.
It'd be,
I would-
interesting to know.
yeah, that's a very good question
I
for
know.
Casey.
I know somebody who would not. There's no way Lincoln Riley releases that stuff.
I mean,
I
I would-
think that's a
I would agree
need to
with
know
that.
basis. So I don't know how different he is than everyone else.
I think he's very different.
But
than
I
everybody else.
bet it's not so. Oh, you're inside, and I know he's a quarterback, so it's not like he's just a player. But I don't know. Maybe he does get the entire offensive playbook. Maybe. I don't know. I would see some.
I would love
think
to find that
I don't
out.
think the playbook is that secretive. Now, the nuances of why you're wanting to do something, you're not going to teach on a piece of paper or iPad anyways.
Yeah.
You're going to teach in practice, like why you're reading
Probably
this, why
so.
you're reading that.
What about the
Probably so.
nomenclature? Like, when we say this word, it means this. When we say this word, it means this. And you're sending them a glossary essentially of
Maybe.
of what
I could see how
the
that'd be
scheming
helpful.
is.
I just also could see
Yeah,
how that'd be
'cause-
a big risk. And if it's not under your control, I could see them. I could see them saying, "Here's our playbook," and our playbook is deep. I mean, I think the playbooks
is it?
are really, really deep. And you're only seeing. I mean, from prior conversations with others, I know the way it works is you've got 100 plays or 300 plays, and you're only really working on 50 for this game. It's not like you can play any play in your playbook. You didn't
Right.
work on that all week,
Yeah.
so it's not. It is effectively not in the playbook right now. So I could see them seeing some basic stuff, but
given a true
lot
freshman,
of stuff they're not going to see.
I mean, giving a true freshman a 100-play playbook and the nomenclature of what they're going to be calling their scheme.
Maybe the base routes and the base
Yeah.
stuff I could see. Yeah, I could see that.
I'd love to find that
The
out.
details, I bet there's a lot hidden. I bet there's a lot of, in week 7, here's something we're going to run you've never seen before. I've been working this up. Here's a thought. I don't know. Well, that's a great question. That we'll have to get somebody on who could answer that for us. That'd be really good. Great question. Definitely thought-provoking. It gets us excited because, as we've already said, we are, I think, unanimous in is that true to say we're unanimous and we're ready to see Arnold? If I told you Arnold's starting against Cincinnati, what would you guys say? Yay or nay?
I wouldn't believe you, but I'd be fine with it.
I'm absolutely fine with it.
I'd be 100% okay with it.
Yep. Like we've said before, the floor is the same.
And the ceiling's higher. Well, thanks again to Tobacco Exchange, our post-game sponsor. 3 great locations. We should have mentioned at the top of the hour, they've got a special the entire month of September. It is a buy 4, get 1 free on a number of really good cigars. Go in there and take advantage of that if you've got a chance. They include CAO Punch, which we're smoking tonight, Cohiba, Sancho Panza, and Macanudo. So wonderful special running all the month long in September at Tobacco Exchange. Anything else to conclude
Do
before?
us a favor and go in there and tell them that you heard it on the pod.
That's right. Tell them
They'd like
tell
to
them that you
know.
heard them here.
Yeah.
They want to hear this. They want to know that you guys are out there connecting with them.
I'm anxious for conference play.
I'm anxious for conference play too. We're
I'm ready
about to-
at Cincinnati.
Is
Cincinnati
is that really a conference
It's a
game though?
traditional Big 12 power.
It is,
Yeah.
it is the first and last time we will play Cincinnati in the Big 12.
Yep.
And maybe the first and last time in a long time that we'll play Cincinnati.
At
Period.
all. Yeah. So I mean, that'll be. Today was a quasi home game for
Yeah.
us.
First true road game.
Yep.
road game. I'm sure they may be a little bit down after losing to Miami of Ohio tonight.
Ugh.
But maybe that was just because they're looking ahead to the Sooners coming to town.
And the Big
this
12
week.
looks really bad.
The Big 12 looks atrocious.
It's so down.
Bad.
It's shocking.
Congratulations to Oklahoma State. They did lose to Bama today. Not the Bama that a lot of people think,
The
but
Southern campus.
Yeah, the south part of the Bama. So no, the Big 12 looks atrocious. There's no reason. Lucas has us losing
It's
3 games.
It gets even worse every
3
week.
games before we get to the end.
When
of
I
the
see
season.
BYU getting handled, we see Texas barely, which they end up scoring 21
In the
unanswered there
fourth, yeah.
in the last 8 minutes.
They
of
won
fourth quarter.
31-10, but still a struggling game
yeah.
late. A few, think about it. Wyoming's deep and settles for a field goal. If a few key things happen wrong, a bounce of the ball, an interception, a fumble, they're obviously in a very tough ball game. And
Kansas State lost today.
Texas is the pride
Well,
of the conference.
we don't play Kansas
and all of a
State. We
sudden
don't play
they're not
Baylor.
that good. And yeah, so
Tech has looked bad.
they're not looking good. So it's
it's
really setting
Iowa
up
State
nicely
lost
for us to
today.
be competitive and to have a great shot at getting into the Big 12 title as we enter Big 12 conference play.
Are we in Texas the only undefeated teams in the Big 12 at this point?
UCF, I think, is undefeated.
UCF is
is,
putting
yeah.
up points.
Yeah, Malzahn's got that thing rolling on
Maybe a
offense.
sleeper. Maybe
Yeah.
the sleeper sneaking around the chicken coop trying to get in there and see what they can do.
Kansas is undefeated, I
Kansas
believe.
is undefeated. You're right.
I think,
Yeah, that's right.
so
Kansas.
I think it's just the four of us.
I think you've mentioned our 3 toughest opponents, and
Yep.
maybe the 3 toughest of anyone in the Big 12.
Yep.
Honestly, so we're going to be covering all of that in the weeks ahead. Obviously, we've got a midweek pod coming up where we'll be previewing the game against Cincinnati. We're excited about that. A lot ahead in conference play. This is where you try to take the next step. We'll see if we can do that. Big win tonight against Tulsa, or today, 66-17. Sooners are rolling. Let's hope they can keep it going until the midweek pod. Boomer.
Sooner.